Hey everybody, I'm going to do a whole video on stressing inspections. Stressing inspections, um, there's kind of a history behind it, so I'm going to get kind of detailed on it. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you in the field exactly how to go about it. So if you bear with me, we'll get to the field in a minute. Right now, we're going to start off with the construction and maintenance procedures for post-tension slabs on ground construction, second edition. This is published by the Post-Tension Institute. It is out of publish. I've got a link at the bottom of the video where you can download it and read it. They have not revised it, and they have not said anything against any of it. They just quit putting it in their published catalog that you can't order anymore. So this is a copy that I had that I scanned, and you can see it's just a scan. If you go down here to elongation measurements 9, it's on page 43. So I'm going to go ahead and scan down to page 43. A lot of interesting stuff in here. So this is in elongation measurements, preparations, that kind of thing. I expect you'll want to read all this. But basically what they're doing is they will take a reference marking device. This, you see this right here. And instead of it being a 2x4 laid on its side, they'll lay the 2x4 vertical. Now there's some markets they use different reference marking devices. Sometimes they put a 2x4 this way, like it shows in this manual. Sometimes they put it vertical, so they get an 1.5 inch measurement. Obviously, if you take a 2x4 and you put it horizontal like this, you get a 3.5 inch reference mark. So in a minute, I'm going to show you elongation charts that all take into account an 1.5 inch. See up here at the top it says 1.5 inch added to the typical marking distance. That's because they're taking a 2x4, laying it on vertically, and then spray painting right behind it. When you spray paint it, like this shows, almost all the paint will land on the cable here. Some of it will wick underneath the marking device. At any rate, it's not a real precise way to get it. And if you hold it like this, you'll actually get a shape on the cable. Like if this is the cable, and then this is your marking device, so the cable is underneath here, and you hold it at this angle, you actually get a paint mark that looks like this. Does that make sense? Because some of the spray paint will go under the marking device and get the side of the cable. So like I say, it's not a very precise way to do any of this, but it's the way that we have. But given that there's some inconsistencies in how the proper way to do it, there's reason to give a little bit of slack, and I'll show you that in the field when we go up to the field, and I show you the actual recording of us doing one in the field. So some markets, like if you go to Brownsville, they do not use a 2x4 at all. They take a pipe, and they take a 12-inch pipe, and they jam the pipe all the way down here to the anchor. They don't hold the pipe up against the slab like this is held up against the slab. They jam it to the anchor. And so it's important to know if it goes all the way to the anchor, or if the device stops at the slab. So it's important to know where they stopped it. So when you get your measurements, you're measuring to the right reference point. The idea is wherever the reference point started, when they stressed it, it won't be there anymore. Because they stressed the cable, it'll be somewhere over here. So we're going to measure the distance to the slab to know the distance the cable stretched or elongated. So that's what we're going for here. And that's basically what this will say. So So at some point you would put the reference marking device back on the slab and you'd measure the paint mark, how far it moved. It was right here, now it's here. And how many inches did it move? Well, what we're doing instead is, if you use my chart, I'm going and adding the 1.5 inches onto it, so you don't have to measure with the marking device. You just measure to the slab. It's already added that 1.5 inches. But again, that's presuming they're in like the Houston market or Dallas market, or mid-Texas market. All those markets use an 1.5 inch reference. I think Corpus Christi uses an 1.5 inches. If you get down the Rio Grande Valley, all bets are off. You have to find out. I think it's 12 inches of pipe put up against the actual casting. So they jam it into the pocket all the way against the casting. So again, it's important to know what you're dealing with. So you're supposed to measure the elongation. This is the commercial way. Strand has you do a commercial stressing report if it's a commercial job. So this is at the end of the book here. You can see what a commercial stressing report looks like. It's what they'll do. Actually, I could get you a copy of one real quick. But it looks exactly like this. Instead of out of concrete, you have another item over here. It'll just be the cable number. So 1, cable number is 2, 3, 4, 5. So basically you go around the slab and you label each cable. Cable 1 might be 10 feet out of concrete. But probably, let's see, cable 1 might be S.22. Cable 2 might be BS23. Cable 3, and you just pick a point on the slab and you go around and you say 1, 2, 3, 4. So this might be S42 or something like that. But this chart that they're showing here is a generic chart where the cables just sequentially get longer. And the reason they're doing that is because in a field measurement, they've done something. You see up here it says plus or minus 10% for slabs on ground. So I'm looking at page 78 of this book. And it is plus or minus. That's the tolerance. But what's real interesting is they have figured out, and this chart was made by Russ Price. Russ Price is a co-owner of Suncoast Post Tension. He's an engineer. And he made this for Post Tension Institute because what he found is if your jack force is 33 kips, 33,000 pounds, there is some seating loss. Do you see where he's accounting for seating loss? And what he means by that is he's accounting for seating loss. Most engineers do not account for seating loss. It's right to assume, let me go up here to where we were. Sorry, it's taking me a minute to find it. It's right to assume there is some seating loss. Oops, where are we? Page 48? Here it is. What is seating loss? Seating loss is you have a cable, you have wedges that lock the cable, you have an anchor, it has a wedge canal, it has a wedge canal that these wedges fit in and the cable, but it all doesn't barely fit. So when you take the cable and the wedges and they all try to fit in this wedge canal, they don't actually all fit. But for them to, once you let go of it with the stressing, so they pull on the cable, when they let go of the stressing, it sucks these wedges into the wedge canal. So this wedge and this wedge get sucked into the wedge canal. And when it happens, this cable relaxes just a tiny. The amount of distance it takes to suck those wedges in. Now, most engineers on their elongation chart do not account for the suckage of the wedge canals. This one does. Seating losses, 3/8 of an inch, no positive seating. So on a short cable, there's a 10-foot cable. When you figure the seating loss, what it does is when you relax it 3/8 of an inch, and it only elongated 1/2 an inch, when it elongates 1/2 an inch and then it relaxes 3/8 of an inch, you're only left with a little. So that's why you don't have any cables less than 10 feet. So what this is figuring is, I've stressed it, it pulled an inch. Then we seated the wedges, it lost 3/8 of an inch. Now, instead of having 33 kips, you have a different final force. See how the final force on a short cable right here is pretty small? But if you go down the chart, they all get to be pretty close to 27.5. The reason why there's more final force on a 112-foot cable is because it's stressing 8 inches over here, 9 inches. So it's stressing 9 inches, and that little bit of seating, 3/8 of an inch, doesn't amount to much. So its final force is much higher. I'm only saying all this because I want you to understand some of the calculus that goes behind some of this. And hopefully I'll simplify it here in a minute, because I'm going to give you this chart. So this is a chart based on this manual, but instead of decimal inches, see how it has 1/16 of an inch. But see how this skips from 14 to 16? So 14 here, 16 here. So it doesn't have 15. What's 15? Well, I figured out 15. I found the median of these measurements over here. And then what I've done is I figured out the minimum 10%. So there's a target, there's a 10% allowance above and below the target. So you don't want it ever really too much beyond, but this is the minimum. And you'll typically see it with the seating loss that it'll be higher than the minimum, but not much higher. If it's much higher, like double the minimum, something's broken on that cable. So this chart is a quick reference. It doesn't skip. It goes from 14, 15 to 16. It gives you your 10% of loss, and it subtracts 2 feet from the tendon tail. So where it says 14 here, it's assuming that it's 12 feet out to out of concrete. See where it says out to out of concrete? This isn't the length. This is the out to out of concrete. So if you have from concrete edge to concrete edge 10 feet on that cable, it's probably an S22 or S12, because you need 2 foot of tendon tail to pull on. So this is a quick reference chart that you're going to want to use that subtracts 2 feet for the tendon tail and then calculates the out to out of concrete based on this chart. I also have a commercial strand chart. This is one developed by Dick Martyr before he retired. He's the founder of Strand Engineering. And these are the commercial values that he and I worked on together for the minimum allowance. He didn't allow 10%, he allowed 7%. So this is a different chart. You'd only use it for commercial. And then here for strand systems only, we have a chart that uses their chart it's derived from their chart that's on each report. The only difference is what's nice about this is it accounts for the 2 foot. So this is the out to out of concrete. You got to be wary of that. So if it's 12 foot out of concrete, it's probably an S14, right? So an S14 would have this minimum elongation. This is for strain systems only. So this is a generic chart you can use for any engineer. This is strain systems only, but you have to use your cable length. This is the commercial, and I'll have links for all of this in the description for this video below. But hopefully you can kind of see where this is all going, and it makes a little sense seeing the maintenance and procedures publication by Post-Tension Institute. You can read it for yourself. I'll have the link below. And then let's get to the field measurement, so you can, or the field demonstration, so you can see actually an inspection in progress. Hopefully this all comes together. If you have any questions, call me. Thanks. Stand by. So this is the chart. You'll notice at the top here, it says 1.5 inches added as the typical marking distance for cable stressing. This already subtracts 2 feet from the tendon tail. So where we got this S31, I subtracted 2 feet from the tendon tail to get 29, and then I found out the calculated elongation and subtracted 10% from that to get a minimum elongation. Now, why is 29 the right length? 29 is the right length because the slab, if it's 29 feet across, they use a 31-foot cable, so they always make it 2 foot longer. Does that make sense? So S31s and S32s have this minimum length. Let's find it on this chart. 3 1/4 and 3 1/8. So there should be, let's count them. I'm going to type this in here. 3 1/8, 3 1/4. So I've typed that just to help me. So 3 1/8 for the BS32, 3 1/8 for the S31, 3 1/4 for the BS32s, and we have 1, 2, 3. Oh, those are 33s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. This is 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So it also has 33-foot cables. Let's see what 33 is. 33 is 3 1/2. So these end beams are 33, or should be 3 1/2. I'm going to type that in here. 3 1/2. So these are the measured minimum elongations. That's the calculated elongation minus 10%, because they're allowed to get 10% off. So I'm going to measure these, but this also adds the 1.5 inches for the paint mark. So now let's go front to back. Nice thing is this is a rectangle, so almost all the front to back cables are the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Let's count that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So there's 14 cables front to back, and they're from 73 to 70. I guess there's 2 that are 74, 71 to 74. So I'm going over here on the list. I see 71 is 6 1/4 and 74 is 6 1/2. And the 2 in the middle are 6 3/4. So or 7 and what did I say? 7 1/4. No, 6 1/4 to 6 1/2. So I'm going to type this in here. 6 1/4 to 6 1/2. depending on its length. So basically with these measurements, and I also know from down here, where is the chart? There's the chart. There should be 42 cables. See my finger? 42 right there. So we're going to count 42 cables on this house and make sure the lengths are correct. Okay, these first two cables are 33, which is a little bit longer, but they're nowhere near too short when 3 1/4 is the minimum. So here's what I'm doing. I'm putting it down on the slab, not inside the hole, but on the slab. I'm looking for the paint mark right there, and I'm getting 4 inches. And then these, I'm getting close to 4 inches, so nowhere near the too short. On this one, I'm getting almost 4 inches. So I'm going to do this on every cable. If you see a group of 3, like right here, I'm going to measure the shortest one. That's the shortest one. Remember, it has to be 3 1/8 to 3 1/4, and I'm getting 3 1/2. So if this one is 3 5/8, and the other two are a little bit longer, I'm not going to measure those two. See, I'm kind of figuring out how to do it a little shorter, and so on and so forth. I'll start the video again when I get to the back, but I'm just going to measure each one. Alright, so we got all that on that side. On the left side, some of them were 6 1/2 up to 6 1/4, and the first one is measuring 7 1/4. Let's see. Yeah, I'd say that's 7 1/4. This one is about 7. And this one 7 1/8. And so on and so forth. Now I want to say something on this video to make sense of this real quick. I'm showing you the absolute minimum calculated elongation on my chart. So it should be bigger than that or equal to. But if I put a tape measure on it and I'm getting to right there, that lower paint mark, I'm getting 1/8 too short, but to that paint mark I'm getting the right number. So wrong number, right number. I'm just saying, if you ever run into that, be generous, because if you tell them I'm going to fail this house because of this one cable, but it's got an indeterminate stripe, then they're going to come out with their tape measure and say, well, I get the right measurement, I'm not going to re-stress it. And I don't want to go out and have a tape measuring contest with the same tape measure and go, no, I'm getting a different tape measure. Make sure it's really deficient. So a cable that's not stressed or slips will slip a good deal, not a debatable amount. So look for the minimum. Don't create extra work over a debatable amount. And if all the cables measure exactly correct, let's say all of these measure well above the minimum, and we get to this, and all of them measure on this side of the house well above the minimum, and we get to this last cable and we go, well, shoot, I can't see any paint. That might happen. I might be covered in dirt, and when you uncover it, there's no paint. Well, you can still tell it was stressed. So if you look down in the hole, you'll see the wedges are seated in there. Wedges are those two crescent-shaped or moon-shaped metal parts inside there that hug the cable. I don't know if you can see that or not. I'm going to turn on my flash. Maybe you can see that now. But yeah, those metal things are in there, and you can feel it with your finger. Let's say it's buried in water and you can't see, and this is the last one. It's in there, and don't try to get a whole lot of grease on your finger, but feel a circular metal piece. Okay, So as the inspector, she feels the circular metal pieces there. So even if it was buried in water, you can tell if it's stressed because those wedges are seated almost flush with the anchor. So in that hole, you'll have the metal casting that you saw during the pre-pour, and they'll put those 2 metal pieces on either side of the cable, and those are the wedges that hold it. If they're sticking out well past the anchor, they're not seated correctly. But if they're snug up to the anchor, almost flush with the anchor, they are seated wedges. You can tell that it's holding stress. The other thing you can tell this one has been stressed, because do you see these teeth marks right here? That's where the gripper grabbed the cable and pulled it. And you can see that on every stressed cable. Here, here. So any cable that gets stressed will have that mark on it. And if it's holding stress, it'll have seated wedges. So it's not enough that they stress it, it has to hold stress. So you have to check the seated wedges. But the main thing you're there to check is the paint. And I'm just telling you, if it was my house, and out of 44 cables, 43 of them were measured correctly, and one of them I couldn't measure, but I could tell was the wedges were seated in my own personal house, or even for my mom, I would not have anybody hook up any equipment to it. I would just pass it and create extra work. Does that make sense? Okay. So here we're just looking for more than 6 and a quarter. I can see that these next 4 are lined up pretty even. I think one of them shorter than the rest. Which one do you think it is? They all are about the same. I would probably say this one might be slightly shorter, but it's a good 7 inches, and we're only going for 6.5 max. Over here, I think that's the shortest one. What are you getting? You get more than 6.5, 7.25. All right, let's just count the cables one more time to approve the house. 1, 2, 3. We're looking for 44 cables. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. Was it 42 or 44? Let's look on the plan. I thought it was 42, but right there it says 42, not 44. So everything passes. I'm going to pass the stressing inspection on this one.